Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Building Bridges. I'm your host, Greg Johnson, a podcast that likes to bring topics up and people into interactions where they might have difference of opinions or different ideas about things, but that we can learn how to have communication and conversations that don't lead to arguments, but really lead to thoughtful exchange and continue to advance this whole concept of convicted civility. Now, you might notice that we've been trying a little bit more to deliver more content with our podcast, and so we've been very encouraged by some of your responses. We did a special podcast on John MacArthur, Dr. John MacArthur, and his role in the evangelical Latter-day Saint dialogue and how instrumental he was in the early years way back in 1997, and really how he instigated some of the conversation that began at that time and then developed into a full-blown conversation that exists today and that is continuing to take place. So he was very instrumental, and we just speak about that. And then we actually had a wonderful response to our podcast on the Harvest Crusade that is coming through Greg Laurie. It's still coming November 16th at the UCCU Center, the event center there on the campus of Utah Valley University, in response to the shooting and assassination of Charlie Kirk. We, as a group of local pastors, connected with Harvest and Pastor Greg Laurie out of California to bring a Harvest Crusade, and we've titled it Hope for America. The University of the Utah Valley University has been extremely supportive and cooperative with us, and we're working with different entities on the campus, and there's been a great response to that podcast. So thank you for checking that out. If you want to go back and look at them, they're posted on our channel. We love your comments, your feedback. Certainly, if you like it, and that's great for us. If you want to share it, do that as well. And if you want to subscribe and become a partner to our podcast, we would be grateful for that. So up front, we just want to say that we're excited about the opportunity we have to share some stuff that might really help somebody process something or understand or learn about something that they didn't know before. So we're looking forward to doing that. Today's topic is a little, coming out of the distant past, out of the grave. Because we have actually Marco, my co-host and producer of the Building Bridges podcast, is my co-host these days, and we've been talking in these previous podcasts with each other. That kind of allows for some banter and back and forth. But you and I have been talking about the topic we want to talk about in this podcast for not months but years, because we want to talk about what happened to Ravi Zacharias. Someone that so many in the Christian world loved, admired, respected, and then he tragically passed away from cancer, approximately 2 months from diagnosis to death. It was so sudden. It was back in May of 2020, so over 5 years ago he's been gone. But about 9 months later, not even that long, a number of months later, accusations came out against his personal morality and what activities he was involved with women. And it was a shocker to the whole Christian world. So we're going to talk about that today. Are we able to do that?
I'm excited. And before we enter into this conversation, you mentioned that some people say things about, you haven't introduced me well, so you should do it the right way. Now,
right.
we can.
Thank you for the
reminder.
reminder.
This is a very important part for our viewers. Just kidding.
Yes, we pay him the big bucks, by the way, to get him to be on this program. We had to go through his agent and everything, but we landed him. And so Pastor Marco is a technology guy, and he loves video work, and so he's been working with me in this way for a number of years. But we just thought it would be good to bring it all together. He is a pastor of a local church right here in the Salt Lake City area in West Jordan. Is that right? Or
Exactly.
South Jordan or West Jordan?
South Jordan.
South Jordan. Somos Vida is the congregation that he leads. Would you call it a Spanish congregation, or would you call it?
It's primarily a Spanish congregation.
Yeah.
We have a we have an English service, but it's very small right now. But yeah, we have. And if people sometimes they notice an accent on me, it's because I'm from the South. People don't realize that. But
you're from the deep South.
I'm
deep.
really from the South. No, I'm from Chile. I've been here almost 17 years, and I love this. I love technology. I love the idea of using a ministry like Standing Together to. I mean, this is the part, and we talk a little bit in the first podcast that we did together. But there's so many things that stories that Greg have, and things that he has gone through, and things that he knows, connections that he has, that I feel like is an opportunity. You know what I mean, to create the conversation. So, but something that is really interesting too. You were telling people to subscribe and to share, but at the same time, we love the comments. I think that interactions has been really, really good. So keep coming.
Even when we disagree. And that's okay, because this is all about building bridges. We encourage our interaction to be positive and respectful, but
I love those long comments. I love those ones. It's like, wow, you took your time.
You wonder if they just spent the last 45 minutes writing a term paper.
But we read it.
Yeah.
We read them. So we are excited for that.
That's right.
Okay, getting back to the subject.
So you're married and you have two wonderful kids.
Two wonderful ladies. Okay. Two wonderful girls, sorry.
Yeah.
We are so happy here in Salt Lake. But getting back to our subject.
Okay.
I think it's fascinating to me the history that is with Ravi and Standing Together. And I think the first place where we can start is how do you met Ravi Zacharias?
Well, and I think that's why we care about this subject.
Yes.
I care about it because he was a personal friend. I wouldn't say I was a super close friend. I was a peripheral friend and a partner in multiple ministry opportunities with him. And even though we didn't, have lots and lots of time together, we were together many times over the years. And I considered him certainly an influence in my life. I would even say that I modeled my ministry philosophy and his methodology of communicating graciously, effectively on behalf of the truth of the gospel. After him, I listened to him all the time and enjoyed all of his sermons and had the incredible privilege of considering myself to be more than an acquaintance, but just a ministry friend and ministry partner. I first met him while I was in Denver Seminary, way back in I graduated in 1992, and so I'm pretty sure he came to speak to us in the early part of 1991.
Wow.
To the Denver Seminary chapel and student body community. And I remember it because he spoke 4 days, and we actually only had 3 days of chapel.
Wow.
We had a chapel that was like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They didn't have chapel on Monday or Fridays because grad students aren't coming in on Monday or whatever. So he actually spoke Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And so chapel was extremely poorly attended the first day that Ravi spoke. And how do I know that? Because I was there. I went to chapel. And many people did not even know the name Ravi Zacharias.
This is kind of like in the beginning when...
Yeah, and his ministry began in the mid-'80s or the early 80s. And so by 1991, he was not well known.
Yeah.
And yet our president, Dr. Haddon Robinson, knew of him and knew of his amazing speaking abilities, his incredible mind, his wonderful communication. And so literally I went and I felt embarrassed for him to have to speak to such a few number of us. I mean, maybe 50 in our whole student body showed up for that thing, because I think some of the people just thought he was, some missionary that served in India or something. It wasn't clear that
like
who this guy was.
Like a local guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so like a good-hearted missionary fella, And so we go, and up walks this Indian man who is very distinguished looking, and he begins to speak with his accent, that is both Indian and crisp and sharp and amazing and just really easy to hear and easy to listen to. And as he began to unpack scripture and talk to us, it was, I mean, everybody was sitting up like, this guy's amazing, you know? And so you could hardly get a seat the next day. The word got out that quickly that you do not miss chapel. This guy that they brought in is amazing. And so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, pack. And he was staying in our student housing, our Denver Seminary housing. And so that I had access to that, and he was actually having open appointments. So I went and met with him, told him how amazed I was and how impressed I was and how grateful I was for his ministry to our campus at Denver Seminary, and that I was heading off to Utah to be in full-time ministry after I graduated in the the early spring or the late spring of 1992, and would he ever consider an invitation to come and speak there? And he said, I've never spoken in Utah. I'd be happy to come to Utah. So that was kind of this. Everybody asks that, and he's again not so well known that you could ask him and not feel like you're going to have to feel silly for asking this famous guy to speak for you. So when I graduated, I began to share the idea with our senior pastor at the church that I was serving up in Ogden, and we brought Ravi to Utah for the first time in 1994, so just 2 years after I joined the staff. And we brought about 22 churches together in the Ogden-Layton area of northern Utah to partner in the public outreach with Ravi Zacharias, and it was a focus on knowing the truth. And so he spoke 4 nights at the Ogden High School. But in addition to that, we really wanted to pursue an LDS interaction. And we got the permission to bring Ravi to BYU in 1994, Brigham Young University, where he gave 2 lectures, public lectures on the campus through the Richard L. Evans Chair. Then David Paulson was the chair holder at that time out of the philosophy department. So he was kind of impressed with the concept of a Ravi Zacharias. Sometimes people at that point were kind of associating him a little bit like a C.S. Lewis thinker, speaker kind of individual. So anyways, we got to know each other through that visit. And so, 2 visits, 2 lectures at BYU, 4 evening lectures, and then he spoke in our church. And it brought the churches together in northern Utah during that time in 1994. It was just a fabulous experience. And we knew that God had given us a chance in Utah to have an amazing speaker that was kind of probably emerging onto the national and international stage in a way that you don't often get to know somebody before they become quite well known.
Will you say by that time was already kind of like an apologetic type of ministry then? Because for people that might not know or hasn't ever been here in Utah, the idea of this conversation between LDS and evangelicals as being forever, you know what I mean? And sometimes I think one of his key elements is the way he approached this conversation.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, and this is the thing that I was thinking, because we were talking last week about Charlie Kirk, but we will say in a way that Ravi was the start of this question. Will you say that? Like, opening mic type of thing where
He took questions at the end of every sermon presentation or public presentation, and he would always, like Charlie Kirk, he would say, if you are a student, you come to the front of the line, and if you are a student that has a contrary position to Christianity, you come to the front of the line. So just like Charlie Kirk, if you were a critic, you got to come to the front of the line.
Wow.
Because he wanted to deal with those objections.
Tough questions.
He wanted to honestly engage thoughtful young college students, because that's where his major platform was, in college students, college campuses, theological institutions. Of course, he spoke at churches and things like that too, and internationally. He kind of had a touch into several significant areas. And you mentioned, just for the sake of our audience, that Ravi was an apologist. And just so everybody knows what that means, is not somebody who's sorry that they're a Christian, but it's an apologist is one who defends the word, from the Greek word apologeo, which it basically says to defend or to give a reason for. So he was a person who had great mental capacities and great speaking capacities to memorize and speak. My goodness, the length of narrative and poetry and music that he would incorporate into his message from memory were absolutely astounding. And people would just see him close his eyes and give all this detail, and you think, wow, this is amazing.
I mean, in my mind, I have some viral videos of Ravi getting like tough questions, and he kind of like answering in a way of one of the characteristic of his way of doing that in grace, love, but truth. You know what I mean? It was amazing.
It was an incredible balance, because Ravi used to tell me personally that the greatest apologetic that we have in this world against any opposition to the message of Jesus Christ is the love of God. And so he led with love. He led with kindness. He led with honor and respect. But yet he was so capable at an intellectual level. Sometimes people would joke and say, man, you have to listen to a Ravi Zacharias message 3 or 4 times because he just used like 4 words I've never heard before, you know. But at the same time, he was easy to listen to. Even as you knew he was saying some pretty deep and profound things, it wasn't like intimidating. So he was able to balance that love and truth component. And he spoke with gentleness, but with clear reasoning, and made a clear defense for the gospel.
No, I mean, and obviously, I will say that a lot of people learn and took so much from what he used to do and the way that he used to do it, and God kind of like, there are some stories that I've heard, people like being in a faith crisis, listening Ravi and getting back to the truth. You know what I mean? Why? Because the man was confronting the culture of that time. You know what I mean? The question that he was able to answer, it was so many times part of what is still being happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he often focused on parts of the culture that a lot of pastors and preachers and speakers kind of avoid. So he would deal with like the business community. He engaged the business leadership all over. He dealt with military leaders all over the country, all over the world. He would give messages that way. He would deal with political leaders. He would deal with people who are major leaders within the arts and media. So he always targeted things that had real influence: politics, business, the academy, the university, media, and culture, and did so with such a profound, kind of his portfolio of illustrations and topics were just amazing. So after that,
but you were saying that, and I want to ask you this: he came to Utah, speak with all these churches. What was his impression after that?
Well, and I didn't know him well at that time. Again, he would come eventually 2 more times to have major ministries in Utah, and another time to have a more off-the-record ministry opportunity. But in 1994, he left here thinking, wow, this is a challenging place. This is a place where, the most wonderful people, the LDS community, and yet we have some very serious theological differences with them. So it wasn't. He was amazed that it wasn't like a battlefield. A lot of times in the past, he was aware that there were those forces that wanted just to fight.
That's what I was thinking when it comes to this subject of talking about LDS and evangelicals. Was always like confrontational, you know what I mean?
Right.
Especially in the 80s when you say that.
Yeah, and we're talking about 1994, but I think because he was such a gifted and capable speaker that wherever we went, particularly like at BYU, in between our presentation or his presentation, they had a nice luncheon for him. And I think the BYU faculty, mostly the religion faculty, Bob Millett was kind of ahead of that at the time. Robert Millett, my good friend, and they were so impressed with him that they were not offended or bothered. And he was very careful. He wouldn't just attack them and say, you believe crazy things or whatever, but he would talk about the very substantive doctrinal differences, maybe about the nature of God, a triune understanding of historic Christianity versus a 3-part being deity of the LDS Church, and various other doctrinal distinctions. But he covered them in such respectful, impressive ways that nobody was really that offended. And you say, well, then maybe he wasn't being assertive enough or bold enough or confrontational enough.
Maybe sometimes it's not the message, it's the way that you present the message.
Right. The message was presented well. And I think people understood from the LDS community or from the public meetings where he stood and where they stood. So anyways, that event happened, and I stayed in touch with him because he started inviting me to his annual, he called it the Founders Meeting, where he would raise money for his ministry, and it was a very nice setting. It was always funded by somebody else, and so we got invited because we became part of that friendship circle. So Jill and I would go year after year for many years to these meetings in the fall, and we'd have a weekend, and we'd get to say hi to he and his wife Margie and the family and other people that we were getting to know. So that when I stepped away from a local church pastorate and began a different kind of ministry here in Utah in 2001 called Standing Together, which is the host of this program, Building Bridges with Greg Johnson, is a product of Standing Together. And so Standing Together wanted to reach out to Ravi again. I wanted to reach out to Ravi and say, would you come and help me launch this new thing I'm doing? And he immediately said yes. So it didn't happen right away. It happened about almost 2.5, 3 years later because of his schedule was in so much more demand at that time. But he came in the fall of 2004, and we had no idea when we initially set out to have him that we could do what we ended up seeing God do, but we ended up having Ravi speak in the Mormon Tabernacle on Temple Square, which it used to be called. Now it's called the Tabernacle on Temple Square. But it's the smaller venue of the LDS Church in downtown Salt Lake City on their property on Temple Square. And up until about 2000, it was the largest facility where the LDS Church would gather twice a year for General Conference. And now they meet in the larger venue across the street called the Conference Center, which seats 21,000. But the Tabernacle at that time sat about 7,000 people.
Wow.
And so it was a rather nice facility, and it was very historic.
Now, people need to understand, and the history here of this thing, but which is that was an historical moment in terms of an evangelical sharing the gospel or sharing evangelical message from the tabernacle. I mean, I remember we did a video about that a while ago, but when was the...
When we invited him and he agreed to come and help us launch our ministry, which is a ministry of unity among the evangelical churches and a bridge building focus in engaging the LDS culture from an evangelical point of view. We wanted to change the paradigm. We wanted to change the tone and the tenor of interaction between Latter-day Saints and evangelicals. And I say God be praised, because over the last 25 years, we've seen significant progress in that area. As much as right now, with our Greg Laurie event that's coming on November 16th, the LDS Church's participation and support of it at the institute level, at the Orem Institute, over the top amazing. It's almost like they couldn't do more to help us promote it and share the message and get it out there. And they're so excited to come and participate. But in terms of where we were back then in 2004, we wanted to begin to really change the tone. And so Ravi was going to come. We were going to have him speak up at Weber State, which he ended up doing. We were going to have him speak at the University of Utah, which he ended up doing, and having these public forums in a 3-part series. And then we were going to have him maybe, just maybe speak at BYU. And one problem after another, one hesitation after another at BYU. And I had all these great connections down there, and I thought for sure they're going to let him speak. I mean, this is Ravi Zacharias. I mean, he's becoming quite well known now, and he's quite a scholar, and he's quite a thinker and a theologian, and this would work perfectly.
A great opportunity as well.
Absolutely. Delay, no, not yet. So in God's goodness, he had a bigger plan, and that was the Tabernacle on Temple Square. And when we got permission to do that, and this is a fact, Marco, we got permission directly from President Gordon B. Hinckley, because I wrote him a letter at the passing of his wife.
The famous letter,
the passing of his wife, in April of 2004, right after General Conference. She passed away, and I wondered to myself, as a young pastor in Utah, had an LDS Church prophet, a president of the LDS Church, ever received a condolence letter from an evangelical pastor, right? So I thought of that, and I said, I'm going to just wish this man well. I'm going to tell him that I'm praying for him. He was an older man with I think 50 plus, maybe 60-year plus marriage. And so I sent that letter, and then I was prompted at the end of that letter, and I really believe nobody can convince me otherwise, that I did not write this letter for any other reason than what I just said. But at the end of it, I felt this inspiration, this compulsion to actually write on the letter, P.S. I was wondering if I could share with you that we have a very wonderful speaker coming to Salt Lake City, Utah in November of this year. His name is Ravi Zacharias. Many people think he's kind of a C.S. Lewis figure of our own time. We would love to share him with our LDS friends. We don't have a big enough venue to do so. You do. Would you consider letting us host him at the Tabernacle in Temple Square? Wow. That, I mean, you talk about a Hail Mary comment on the bottom of a letter, right? It should have gone nowhere. 2 weeks later, I receive a letter from the First Presidency Secretary saying, President Hinckley has received your letter and thanks you for it. And he's instructed me to tell you that you can use the Tabernacle on Temple Square for your event, and you are to contact Fran Benke. I'll never forget Fran. She was so marvelous to work with. You need to work with her, and you can nail down the date and all the needs you have, and she will be your point of contact. I mean, it was like all these no's and no's and no's, and we know this in ministry. We know this in life. That they're like, sometimes you'll get no after no after no, and you think, why is this not working out? Yeah. And then later you go, oh wow, I'm sure glad
at the end you start understanding why.
Because something so much bigger. And over 7,000 people came that night. 7,000 we believe was in the Tabernacle, because again it was it was what do you call it when it's reconstructed? Not reconstructed, but it was like. It was stabilized and earthquake-proofed and stuff like that. So they had to take out some of their seats, and so it only seats about 4,500 now, I think, today. But back then it sat 7,000, and no, it sat 6,000, and we had 1,000 in the assembly hall. That's why we had 7,000. And that video is on our channel right now.
If you go, that is a good point. If
anybody wants to go watch it. We had to start the roll count over at one point. Remember when we accessed it and brought it from a previous location to our current channel? Yeah. And it was over 1 million views at that time. At that time, it was over 1 million views. Now there's, I don't know what it's...
Like, I think it's in the 100,000 or 200,000.
Yeah, on our channel. Yeah. And so that doesn't really say the fact, but I would say it's fair to say many hundreds of thousands of people have watched that program because it was so historic. And the LDS Church came back to us. Again, we want to get back to the topic of Ravi, but they came back to us and said, in our records, we don't know of a time that this has happened. Now, they had many interfaith kind of things, God Bless America services or whatever, but to have a national figure, an international evangelical figure, and a service that was crafted around that person with music and teaching and prayer from another church, they had not known that they had done that since 1899 when D.L. Moody, the famed gospel teacher and a theologian of his time, as big as Billy Graham was in our time, was invited to speak. And Moody did speak there.
For people that doesn't know this, LDS people are really good keeping record of things.
They very much do keep journals at the individual level, and all of their history is recorded, past and present. So they knew that, and we ended up finding proof in early newspapers in Salt Lake City in the early late 1800s. There was an actual multiple news stories that covered the visit of D.L. Moody to Salt Lake City, Utah. Wow. So that was in 2004. Move forward then, and we stay in contact to an interaction that takes place in 2000. And well, before that, we have another meeting with Ravi in 2014. But earlier in 2011, one of the Mormon apostles wanted to meet Ravi. He called me, his secretary did, from his office. He said, I'm going to Atlanta. Can you set up a meeting for me? And many of our LDS listeners would know that L. Tom Perry was a senior Mormon apostle, one of the most senior. He passed away in 2015 at the age of 92. And he was considered kind of this very, very well-known LDS apostle. And he wanted to meet Ravi Zacharias when he was in Atlanta, Georgia. And he had one specific date that was available in August of 2011. And it was not, you don't just call Ravi and say, are you going to be home on Friday? Can I come by and see you? Because his schedule is crazy. He's flying all over the world.
Famous.
And he literally was flying home the night before, going to be in Atlanta the day that this senior general authority Mormon apostle, L. Tom Perry, requested, and then was flying out on Saturday on a next travel arrangement. So I almost thought, well, this has to be a miracle, because he didn't set that up. It was the way it was, and the date that was requested was the only day that he was going to be in Atlanta. So we went and had this marvelous meeting. It was a great interaction. We had lunch. It opened up doors for a future opportunity, because at one point, literally, it was discussed in that meeting by L. Tom Perry and Ravi Zacharias that when I was there before, I spoke at your tabernacle. But they showed me your new building, which is amazing, this 21,000 seat auditorium called the Conference Center, and L. Tom Perry was like, we ought to have you speak there, and I'm like, can you say that again? You want him to speak at the Conference Center? Yeah, why not? He was kind of that way. And I said, well, if you're serious, I'm going to follow up with you when I get back to Utah. And Ravi, would you? Oh, I'd love to. So we were talking about it, but guess what happened? And again, this is about Ravi, but this is Ravi's stuff. Guess what happened?
What?
Mitt Romney was running for president.
Oh,
in
this
2012.
Is like 2012, yeah.
Right, and we were there in 2011. And L. Tom Perry wrote me an email, and he said, Greg, it's not going to be possible to have Ravi speak at the Conference Center, because so many of your people are so nasty about Mitt Romney and the Mormon Church.
Oh, my
that you could say the Mormon Church back then. We've in recent days, they prefer Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and LDS Church. But nonetheless, it really was such a turnoff that they just backed away from this invitation.
Wow.
So, and that was 2012. But
now, can I do
enough,
I need to do. You're not going to say this, but this is the part when I want to talk to the people here, because this is the part sometimes people don't realize the type of connections that you, Greg, have. So think about this. To whom was the person that this prophet called?
Apostle. Yeah.
Call.
He called me.
And that is the part
because we knew each other.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a relationship that is being built. There are so many things that sometimes we don't realize that people even in the LDS world will kind of like dream to have, but this gentleman here has it.
Well, and it's delightful, because all of us have different gifts, and one of mine is networking and
creating that connections.
For some reason, I seem to have a knack at it. I have lots of opportunities to make lots of connections, and not just with well-known LDS leaders or evangelical leaders, but just I love people and I love interacting with people, and so I kind of remember faces and names pretty well. So like I landed at the airport the other day, and I ran into two people going down the terminal, that a pastor friend from Utah, and then another person who's used to be a politician in the state of Utah. And I interacted with both of them, and they were both shocked that I knew them, because I hadn't seen them in a while. And they're like, "How did you see me?
How do you remember
in the terminal here?" But that's kind of who I am. So I had gotten to know Ravi. I'd gotten to know Elder Perry. He wanted to meet him.
We were in this part where 2012.
Yes.
Mitt Romney was running. There was this nasty thing going on with Christians and LDS people
running with an LDS candidate running for president.
So what happened? Because we have Ravi coming back.
Yeah, he did come back in 2014, because it was interesting. After the election in 2012, yeah, I think it was after the election. They let things kind of simmer down a little bit.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden I got a phone call from the Public Affairs Department saying that Elder Perry had asked if we could follow up with you. You apparently you wanted to have Ravi Zacharias come to Utah.
They reach out to you again?
Yes, it was, because at that point I had indicated to Elder Perry that we wanted to bring him back at a later time, and that so it wasn't as though I hadn't indicated or said, but when they called back to me, it was kind of out of the blue. It was like, oh, wow, great, And so they were like following up, but they were following up later, and enough time had passed that I thought they kind of forgotten about it. So when they called and they said, we'd like to offer the tabernacle again, not the conference center, because we do want to support your interest in bringing him to Utah. So at that point, we just began to kind of look at dates, and we thought about, I think it was January of 2014 that he was able to come, and we secured those dates. It was a little bit different kind of program than in 2014, but he also brought amazing music. We had Michael Card in 2004 through Ravi's invitation, and then we had Fernando Ortega did the music for the second Ravi Zacharias event in 2014. And in between that, we had Nick Vujicic speak in the Tabernacle as well.
Which was another amazing story.
Yeah, that's another story for another day. So that's the cultivation of relationship, from meeting him in Denver Seminary in 1991 to bringing him to Utah in 1994 and having those multiple days of interaction with him, staying connected with him through the following years and going to his conference, and then doing this visit in 2011 with L. Tom Perry, and then this little consternation moment over the Mitt Romney candidacy, and then this kind of almost a peace offering, we said no, but we're going to come back and now say yes. And so Ravi came, and his focus on that particular presentation was really kind of the authority of the Word of God. There was kind of a focus on religious liberty.
Channel 2, I think, is in.
Yes, both of them are on the channel, as well as Nick. So now, it's 2014, and can I say something?
By then, Ravi now
quite well known,
very, very. I mean, international. It's hard to get him.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, the number of invitations he was receiving to speak around the world were beyond capacity. I mean, there's only 356 days a year, right?
65. 365.
Yeah, 365. Thank you I just had a little moment there. But he had more invitations, double, triple that each year. So he had to be much more selective.
Yeah.
So for him to come back in 2014 and do it again was a great honor to me, to Standing Together, to the Christian community of Utah, and to the LDS people that he had begun to have a heart for and an interest in this conversation.
Yeah.
And he became an advocate for our style of ministry, where sometimes we were receiving criticism from people who thought we were being too friendly and too nice and too pleasant. He really supported us, and there were times when I thought, if we don't have Ravi, we might have to sink, because there's so much criticism coming our way for trying to facilitate and foster a new dynamic of relationship with our LDS friends. And yet the blessing of that has it's almost normal today. People think it's always been this way, that we've been so friendly to them and they've been so friendly to us, and we can talk about these doctrinal differences and not get offended and da-da-da-da, and we're working together in certain ways. That wasn't the case 10, 15, 20 years ago. But in the last 5 years, something has really broken free. It's almost like we cultivated this for so long, and we're finally seeing the fruit of that interaction. Some people are still concerned about the nature of the conversation that we have, but Ravi was a huge validation to what we were doing and how we were doing it. And there were times when I just was just so encouraged and so blessed and so thankful, because it's like having a warrior behind you, when you're faced with an attacker,
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, not so fast, So it gave us a lot of legitimacy. And so that was then, and then in 2015, my friend, I publicly talked about my friendship with Elder Jeffrey Holland, now President Jeffrey Holland. He wanted also to meet with Ravi, and so we went all the way back to Georgia for a second time with Jeffrey Holland and his wife Pat at the time in 2015. Had a marvelous, that was just a personal meeting. We landed in Atlanta. We had lunch with each other.
That was like a day thing?
Yes, like a person. There was no public ministry. It was Ravi and his wife, Pat and Jeffrey Holland, and myself, and the five of us hung out all day.
Wow.
We had lunch. We had an afternoon visit to the headquarters of Ravi Zacharias International Ministry. Then we took a little break and we had dinner. It was a marvelous day. Just an unbelievable thing that we would just have that kind of personal interaction. And so, again, I think because I know we need to pivot here. We want to talk about, we're telling about who Ravi Zacharias was and what his impact was and how incredible he was. But something happened.
And that's the thing. I mean, it's undeniable that now we don't talk about Ravi.
Yeah.
For a reason. Let's get back. I remember the day, because we record that day.
Yeah.
The day that you got the news, it was devastating.
Well, there's two parts to this, right? First is that he died of cancer.
Yeah.
A third private.
It's funny that yes, because we did the video of kind of like the legacy of this man.
Remember, we were looking over Temple Square where the tabernacle was we were like on the lawn of the musical center in downtown Salt Lake City, looking towards Temple Square and the tabernacle in the backdrop, and we gave kind of a eulogy and a tribute to Ravi Zacharias and his commitment to standing together and speaking twice publicly and having these private meetings and speaking at BYU, and what an impact Ravi had.
Do you remember how long from the moment that he died to the moment that the news or the things about him start coming out?
Yes, because I just want to say real quickly, he did come for yet another personal private meeting with Jeffrey Holland in Christmas of 2019. So he came out for Christmas because Elder Holland had wanted him to come to see the Christmas program. So once again, Jill and I, my wife, and I, and Elder Holland and his wife Pat and Ravi and Margie and another couple, we had dinner upstairs. Then we went down to the program, and it was kind of, we sat with him and his family. Very lovely, lovely evening. And that was the last time I ever saw Ravi Zacharias alive, because he went in for back surgery in pretty sure it was February of 2020. And it was known he had some back problems, and they were going to go in and fix some of the previous
because he used to have issues with his back like for long.
So he went in, and when they were inside him, they detected a small substance, and they nicked it, and they did a biopsy on it, and it was a very aggressive cancer. And literally from the moment that he was alerted to the fact that he had this rare and very aggressive cancer to the time he died, it was 2 months, almost to the day, from diagnosis to death. So Ravi passes away it would have been...
It was before COVID thing, and...
Yeah.
I don't remember,
sorry. I can't get my dates up. We can Google that later.
Yeah.
But from the time that he was diagnosed with cancer to the passing was very brief, and I believe it was 2 months, almost to the day. So he passes away in 2020. And COVID is alive and well during that time.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of implications for his funeral service in Atlanta. This tell you how big he got. Vice President Pence spoke at his funeral.
I remember.
Yeah. And who's the pastor of that large Atlanta church that has that big college meeting every January? Oh my goodness! Don't you know? Look it up.
May 19, by the way, May 19, 2020
was when he passed.
Yeah.
Okay. So he must have been diagnosed in March, because it was very it was
really fast.
Yeah. And so, anyways,
he
when
died.
He passed away, we were grieving over that. Our friend, our advocate, this incredible gift to the Christian community, the number of books he had written by that time, the videos online, the materials, the legacy was incredible, right? Incredible. I find it a little ironic, by the way, if you go back to 2014 and watch that video, I mentioned publicly as the MC of that night that we had asked Ravi to come in 94, and he came. We asked him to come in 2004, and he came. And I said to his wife, Margie, if you will allow him to come in 2014, we won't bother him in 2024. And he came to the podium that night, and he joked with me and said to the whole audience, it's funny that you mentioned 2024, because I have a book that's to be published when I die, because the nature of the book is very sensitive, and it could be, I could get, it probably dealt with Islamic issues, kind of thing. So he felt it needed to be published after he died, so they didn't come and get him.
That never came to the light?
Well, he said, I just saw in a publishing magazine that it's scheduled to be published in 2024. So apparently I'm not going to be alive at 2024.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember
it was a joke.
I remember you mentioned
he was not
that.
alive in 2024.
Yeah.
He passed in 2020.
Wow.
So by the end of that summer is when the first time I heard the allegations that 7 women had said that Ravi had been inappropriate sexually with them.
By the way, this is the thing, because in my mind, for people that is watching, we record a video about this.
Yes.
And
it's one of the biggest viewed videos I've ever done.
So, but the thing is that it was cold that day.
Yeah, we were up in the mountains in the snow.
Yeah. So you are saying by the end of the summer, but when that is what I'm like a little bit confused. How long from the moment that he died to the moment that these allegations came out?
Well, by noting the death May 19th, I know that I was in Virginia when a friend of mine, I was at his prayer conference. He mentioned, "What'd you think about what came out in the media today with Ravi's morality?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, there's 7 women that are accusing him of being sexually inappropriate with him in spas." He had this back problem, and he would go to spas. In fact, it would later come out that he was in partnership with an Indian friend who had several day spas. And during that time, I want to be honest with our audience, we're gonna tread into some areas that people might disagree and might not be happy that we're even talking about this at this point, because like in the media, everybody said he had massage parlors. But they were day spas. I mean, there are day spas all over. And if you talk about a day spa, you talk about some place where you go get a massage, or you might get, some treatments or something like that. Men and women do that, by the way. And that sounds a little bit less salacious. But if you say, massage parlors, of course, then you think, oh, these are bad places where people get sexually things done for them,
I mean, the way that you present it, obviously, is going to create like, ooh.
And that's where it went almost immediately, is that Ravi was grooming women because he had an accusation in 2016 from a woman in Canada, and that was brought publicly to the forefront of the RZIM leadership. It was brought to the community of supporters that Ravi had at a Founders Weekend, and it was talked about, and it was talked about in a way that this was a false accusation. It was talked about that this person had an agenda, and there was an extortion amount of money being involved, like if you give us $5 million, we won't bring this up anymore. And so from our vantage point, from friends and followers of Ravi Zacharias in 2016, it was like, this is what happens to Christian leaders in the world today. People extort and accuse and falsely suggest of inappropriateness just to try to tear them down and to tear them apart. And I actually know that there was a famous internet personality. I don't even know if he's around anymore, but he called himself the singing or the atheist banjo player, I think, or something of that nature. Yeah. And he had targeted Ravi. I know this to be the case, that he had targeted Ravi's academic credentials and been a real public critic of his.
It's kind of like he made his mission of discredit,
to bring him down.
Ravi for a long time. Am I correct in that?
And I personally know that this is the caliber of the kind of person that Ravi was. I personally know that he sought out a meeting with that personality, and that they did, in fact, meet, and they tried to have an interaction, but the guy was so caustic and so negative and so attacking that even though Ravi tried to meet him and say, hey, you got an axe to grind against me, you don't like me, I get it, but I'm gonna meet with you, and I'm gonna try to help you understand that I'm not the bad guy you think I am. But that it was not successful. I think Ravi got up and left the table at a certain point in time. I don't know all the details. I just heard peripheral things about it. But so that's the price a lot of very famous people pay. If you're a famous person, you're going to get attacked. You're going to get undermined more so now than ever with social media. So a lot of us just thought, oh, this is a terrible moment where a wonderful Christian leader is being falsely accused, falsely attacked by something that we know he would never do. Ravi Zacharias, of any man that I knew in public ministry, of a national leadership level, I would say this would be the one man that my confidence and my appreciation for his integrity is so high that these things would never happen. So when I first heard about them, I immediately dismissed them as false accusations, attempting to extort him and to tear him down and to take him out.
This is in 2020, correct?
2020. And so by the fall of 2020, they could not have one of those public meetings that they'd had in 2019. The last time that I was with Ravi was not at that meeting, but when he came to Utah in 2019 for the December month. But I had seen him twice in the end of 2019. So in 2020, Ravi was gone, and he was accused. And the RZIM leadership was still intact. His daughter was the CEO, and Michael Ramsden was the president, and his whole entourage of young apologists, young defenders of the faith, who were speaking all over the world, were still intact with their newly acquired headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia area. And so everything was hopeful that, we're going to get to the bottom of this. They announced that there'll be an investigation of a credible,
source,
law enforcement source, lawyers and whatnot. They're going to examine this detail, and as soon as we get information, we will let you know what the findings are. Yep. And so we waited for that.
I think this is the part that it create the conflict for those who admire or those who follow Ravi, because unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, that might be wrong to say. The investigation came out and it was devastating.
Yeah.
Devastating.
Validated all the accusations, and they limited their scope to a United States investigation. Ravi was a world traveler. So if you think that he did what he was accused of, then more than likely there were victims all over the world where he had influence and where he traveled and whatnot. So even though there were just a specific number of United States females who had interactions with Ravi and accused him of these behaviors inside a day spa, massage day spa, that it probably was far worse than those seven people. So when this all came out, I mean, I still have questions about the way in which the organization and the board moved so quickly.
Okay, let me ask you why.
Well,
you didn't trust them?
No, it wasn't that. It's just like it seemed like they had fear of being associated with any kind of support of Ravi, any kind of questioning of the report or processing of the report. And we also know that and this is a matter of public thing, I'm not saying anything that's private, Margie, his wife, who, if there's anybody that's a victim in Ravi's behavior, It would be Margie, his wife, who would have to be the betrayed woman, the betrayed wife. And yet, to this very day, I would have all of our listeners know that she has full confidence in Ravi. She does not believe he committed these acts of immorality. And not only that, but the support of his son, the support of his one of his two daughters is very strong for him, even to this day. So here's a man that dies in May and is publicly begins to be accused in September of 2020. He cannot defend himself. He cannot answer these charges. He cannot defend his actions or give evidence to the contrary. So it's kind of a one-sided case. It's not a he said, she said. It's a she said and must be true. And then the investigation is played out. And I'm not dismissing any of the allegations from the women. I'm simply saying that he did not have a chance to respond to those things. That's a fact. And so the investigation then was going to be the way to determine the veracity of these accusations.
But I remember there was this kind of like, I don't know how many pages. There was
a long report and a short report. Yeah.
It was public, and you can read it.
To this day on the internet.
So what, in your opinion, what is the thing that you don't agree with that report? Is there anything in there?
Well, the things that I have heard, and again, I chose not to do some kind of exhaustive deep dive in this. Ravi was gone. I kind of felt like, he's not producing any more books. He's not producing any more videos or any more ongoing ministry. So we don't have to ask that question. Like, should Ravi be out of ministry if this happens? And I just kind of felt like, well, the process will kind of play out. RZIM, the organization, will deal with these victims and help them financially and support them with counseling and all kinds of assistance. Yeah. And I believe all of that has happened. And they did the investigation, and they were told that the accusations were completely true and that Ravi was a serial sex offender. And it was shocking to anybody and everybody that knew of Ravi, unless you were one of the atheist banjo critics of his, kind of thing. But in looking at that, so we've looked a little bit like, who was Ravi Zacharias? We tried to say that on this podcast today. Then we tried to kind of examine not only his platform, but how his platform really was significantly contributing to the LDS evangelical dialogue. And then we've pivoted now to kind of bring to light these the tragedy of his life in 2020, where a diagnosis of cancer brings him to his death in 2 short months. Devastating for the Christian world. So much people thought it was just an incredible loss to Margie, his wife, his children, his grandchildren. He was only 74. And so then we get on the heels of that, we get these accusations, and they're unbelievable to anybody that knew Ravi and thought well of Ravi and liked Ravi. But as this evidence came out and this report came out, we had to kind of say, maybe it's true. Maybe this is true.
Now, after all these years, Greg, where are you with?
Well, that's, I think, the fourth and final topic that we want to cover before we wrap this up today is what should be our response.
No, but my question goes a little bit back to that. What is your, if you don't have to answer, maybe, whatever, we can cut this part. No, just kidding. But what is your opinion about what he was accused and was what the investigation came out with? What do you think?
Part of the reason I've been resonant to even have this podcast topic that we're having today, which is it kind of can seem like 4 years later, why talk about this now? Because it's been so painful for so many who loved Ravi, who are deeply concerned about sexual victims and predators who prey on women who are vulnerable in any capacity. You'll remember that when we did that examination video for Standing Together on the life of Ravi and the accusations against him, I didn't apparently speak to the perspective of the victims enough for some of our viewers, even though that was so viewed so many times with many compliments. There was a concern, and some people felt that I didn't advocate for the women or give support for the females that were accusing Ravi. So I came back with a second video, and I acknowledged that in no way, as we're processing our grief about Ravi, are we dismissing that. Again, I have to say it this way because I am not an official investigator. Did I read the short report? Yes. Did I read the long one? No. It was too detailed and too long, and I got enough out of the short report. Do I know that Ravi did all these things? I like to say it this way, Marco. There are some people who think, Marco, that Ravi did what he was accused of and far worse. There are those who would say Ravi doesn't matter if he did worse. He was accused by 7 women to have committed immorality in these when he was getting massages, and that by itself is enough. And I agree with that. So whether he did worse or whether he did only what he's accused of and what he was investigated of, it's terrible. It's discrediting. It's grieving. Then there are those who say, well, maybe he did some of those things, but he didn't do all those things, or maybe some women accused him falsely and some others, So I will never know. And if Ravi and those women were alone in a room, that is only fully known to them. And you can make the argument that we should simply believe and give credibility to the accuser because they are the victim. And I think that's, for the most part, a true statement. But I have to say there's a certain I don't know that also is established there. And then there are those people who say Ravi was falsely accused and he didn't do any of these things, but we've canceled him completely from the Christian community and from the influence that he once brought. And is that not a great victory for the enemy of truth? Yeah. And we've lost a voice and an author and the words of many of his books that people don't even read, don't even know about anymore. I mean, I've never seen in the Christian community, and I know that culture at that time, the culture that was existing in 20 and 21 was cancel culture was really emerging. The only thing, if you did anything sexually immoral, we just, you're fired. You don't get to be a newscaster anymore. You don't get to be a celebrity anymore. You don't get to be a musician anymore. A lot of public figures, any kind of accusation would kind of almost take them down. And again, I support any victim, male or female, of sexual harassment, of sexual predatorship. I mean, I am 100% against sexual sin and rebuke it if it was Ravi, if it was you, it was me. But there is an element that if you're asking me, Greg Johnson, who knew Ravi Zacharias the way I did, there's an element in my head that I go, man, I just don't 100% know if he did or if he didn't. And if someone's mad at me for that, I just have to be honest.
Yeah, and that's the part that your feelings or the things that you struggle with, it's real, you know what I mean? And it's something that can be denied. You knew the man different than many of us knew him, you know what I mean? So, but obviously there's this huge reality where you see what happened, what is being presented with the evidence, his phone. I mean, there's multiple things that it came out with that. So,
and I'll tell you, I can say this about that illustration or that example that you just used. I think if there is a BlackBerry or a cell phone, and I know Ravi carried multiple devices, if there are, with clear and unambiguous nude photos of women, you have to assume the worst, and that is damning evidence. But I have been told by family members that they did not see those graphic images on his phone and that they were never brought to their attention. Now, if I'm just passing on, denial from people who loved Ravi, I am saying that I have been told that the allegations were not as clearly evidenced as suggested by the report. Yeah. So was the report thorough? Was the report clear? Were those devices affected? Were they touched? Were they cleaned up? I don't know.
Okay, but here's the other side of this coin. The same way that you have the right of feeling that way and having that opinion, which is, like I said, is valid, there's the same experience that this woman went through. And it's real.
Yes.
Had affect them. And the evidence are pointing to they were victims of this situation.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, and I fully acknowledge that.
And at the same time, thinking in terms of what happened with his wife, the grief that she's
suffering,
is suffering until even today, I believe.
Yeah.
It is real.
Yes.
She has the right to believe the innocence of her husband. You know what I mean?
I believe that.
So there is this thing, and for example, I keep coming back to my mind this situation that today is going on with Charlie Kirk and people having a different perspective and wanting to come with truth.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing for Ravi's wife,
right?
Ravi's kids, you know what I mean? Where they want truth, and they've been looking for that, you know, because they see.
His son Nathan has a public blog, not current, but it was at the time, where he defended his father's integrity for months upon months upon months, saying, "My dad didn't do these things. There's no proof here. There's no proof there. There's no smoking gun. There's no pictures. There's no that." Because again, if Nathan would have seen these pictures, if Margie would have seen these pictures, if Naomi would have seen these pictures, if Sarah saw the pictures, because she as a representative of RZIM, she did publicly state that she believed her father was guilty of these things, and that was very painful for the family, because there was 3 that have supported their father's innocence and 1 that didn't, and you would say, well, she had more access to the research and to the investigation, and again, I mean,
do you know if those things are being provided to the family?
They just have the reports that anybody has, but I'm 99.9% sure, as I've been told, that they were not allowed to be a part of the investigation because they were dismissed as being loyal to Ravi because they are so close. A wife is always going to protect her husband. A son
but I mean, at the same time, why do you have to hide?
Well, the other thing is, I want to speak well of my friend Ravi Zacharias because she knows Ravi better than any person on this planet. You could say, well, a wife is going to just think the best of her husband. I have enough confidence in her integrity that if she had any amount of evidence to challenge her confidence in her husband, she would be honest. I mean, her husband's ministry was all about truth. She is a woman who affirms the role of truth.
Yeah.
And I think that if she saw real evidence that her husband had these affairs and these relationships, and there were pictures and there was this and that, well, then she would have, you say, oh, but she has a reason to not believe those things because there's resources, there's funds, there's organizational money, all this, I would say that I know enough to not believe that. I know enough that their confidence in him is based on they feel that the research and the investigation was inadequate, and they've been criticized for that. They've been publicly criticized for that. And I'm in this position where I have to say, I don't know. I have a certain desire to think the best of Ravi from what I knew him to be, but I don't know. I didn't do the investigation. I can't come down on absolutely yes, he did these things, or absolutely no, he didn't do these things. And that's what has been really hard for me in the past 4 years, because I can have private conversations with you or any other friend of mine or other pastor and kind of just admit that. But if you say what we're saying in public today, even though it's been a number of years, and who knows, maybe this podcast gets totally ignored, and nobody listens to it. Maybe a bunch of people listen to it and they just start firing missiles at me. I think I have a right to say what I'm saying, that Ravi was who he was, what his influence was, and that what happened to him, we've been very candid and forthright about the accusations, and that if he committed these things, even in part, they are horrible and they are disqualifying, and he would have needed to been disciplined, but he was dead. There was no discipline to do to him. And his wife has suffered, and his children have suffered far more than he suffered, because when he died, he was a hero. He was a theological hero.
Okay, let me tell you what is my issue with true or not true, this situation. What is my issue? Which I feel like, in a way, when this type of situations happen, we as Christians, we try to, okay, we're not going to talk anymore about this. Let's put it down, because our credibility is
on the line.
So let's make this man disappear.
Yeah. Cancel him.
I look the scripture, and I don't see that.
No.
I mean, why? The Gospels are telling us about a man called Judas. Why? The Scripture is talking to us about
a man named Simon Peter, who betrays the Lord 3 times in public.
A man called
David, who killed a man and had an affair with his wife and got her pregnant, and he was called the apple of God's eye.
You know what
I mean? It doesn't mean any of that's good.
And this is the part that we cannot deny what these people did. But the main question here, it might be, are we going to take away the legacy, the teachings, the books, you know what I mean?
The videos, the speeches, yeah.
And throwing it.
Most of them are gone.
Are not valid anymore? Yeah. The message is not true?
Yeah. No, we would, there's nobody that I would know that knew of Ravi then, national leadership, or even just everyday believers, who would not say of today that those messages were some of the most powerful messages. I refuse to take off the RZIM Tabernacle Address from our YouTube channel in 2020 and 21 when I was told I should, because Ravi's a terrible, no good person now. And I said, well, that may be the case, but that sermon is one of the best sermons I've ever heard in my life, and I'm going to leave it on my channel as a tribute, not to a man's sin, but to the gifts and callings of God over his life that we all honored and appreciated while he was alive. Yeah. And so I feel that we can take the source, and we're not talking about some propaganda here. We're talking about a career of ministry where his books and his writings and his public remarks have been a blessing to people for decades. And I don't think we did the right thing by saying, don't read a Ravi Zacharias book anymore. Don't watch our RZIM video anymore.
It's kind of like, let's cut him out of history.
Yeah, like he didn't exist.
And it's kind of like, we don't want to... This is the part that...
Who won more with that? It was like a double win for the devil in my mind.
I mean, this is the part, for example, there's this lady that I follow on YouTube. She's an apologetic, and she's amazing. She's a great teacher, conference all over the United States. But her story, when you hear her story, Ravi is very important in her life.
Okay.
Very, very much.
Yeah.
And one of the things that it bothers me with her, even though I love her ministry and I love what she stands for, it bothers me that she don't bring him, like, he was part of my story.
When he was a famous, influential leader, wanted to
anybody wants to say Ravi was
coattails, right?
But now it's like
anathema.
She tells the story, and I have heard after the fact when she tells a story, and she take him out of the story. She mentioned, I heard this guy in the radio, and you know what I mean? And the guy in the radio, because I know the story,
is Ravi Zacharias.
Is Ravi.
Yeah. And
why?
Yeah, I think that's a mistake, and I think that's why I stood my ground and said we're not going to remove Ravi in 2004 and Ravi in 2014 from the YouTube channel. And I am told by people who love to listen to that sermon and write on the comment section, "Thank you. I've looked for Ravi and I can't even find him on the internet anymore. I can't find him on YouTube anymore. Maybe other people can find him quick, but I don't know that you see. RZIM shut all that down in response to Ravi's accusations and the assumption that because he did these things, anything he said was no longer valid and no longer worth listening to.
Okay, I have a question here for the audience too, and maybe we can finish discussing this part, which is the fact that can we cancel the message because of the messenger? And this is the part that maybe people that is watching can put in the comments. Can we cancel the message because of the messenger?
And I think what you're really saying, just to nuance that just a little bit, is do we have to cancel the message because of the messenger?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the question, it's so relevant. That's such a great question, Marco, because first of all, there is no perfect human being who speaks on any topic.
Yeah. Who can say, I'm innocent?
Right.
Who can...
Every pastor that gets up and preaches a Sunday sermon has to struggle with the fact that they were not perfect that week. They had some bad reactions. They were inconsistent with their faith. They had lust in their heart, lust in their mind. And we have to come and preach the Word of God, the Bible, to a congregation and say, hey, this is... And a lot of times we will say, pastors will say things like, hey, I haven't figured this out, or I'm not as solid as I need to be, but, this is what the Word of God says. So we hold up the Word of God. We hold up its truths. We hold up its standards. And we know that we fall short.
Yeah.
All have fallen short of the glory of God, and all have sinned, the Bible says. And so we know that the wages of sin are death. So Ravi did sin, and those sins, if accurate, are egregious. They're terrible. They're horrible.
And that is important because we are not justifying the actions. We are not, please, people, understand that we are not justifying anything.
No.
We are just saying, hey, do we need to cancel the
That's
message?
Where we're standing. That's the big message of this podcast right now, is did we make a mistake in literally removing every book off the shelf and every video off the internet?
I mean, there's this famous pastor, Carl Lenz, the New York guy.
Yes.
I mean, do we need to cancel the message? He preached, brought people to Christ for so many years.
Very effective with a younger communicator, culture,
So,
and I'm not from what the little that I knew of Carlin's, I was not a huge fan of his style or his presentation at all. He's not my guy. He's not my kind of guy. And I have to kind of leave, and we know that he had failure, and that was a public matter.
I mean, and we have so many, like the guy from Texas recently.
Robert Morris.
Yeah. This guy from this big church, and Vision... What was his name? It was a short guy with glasses. Oh, dang. He used to talk a lot about vision and mission. Oh, big church. And he was accused too. I mean,
what's state?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe people, if you know, if
put that in the comments.
If you know,
we can acknowledge the list is long.
And what that tells you, that we are sinners.
Yes.
First of all.
Yes.
But at the same time, the message is the thing that we need to kind of bring out and say the message still alive and we can take from it.
And I hope that any viewer is understanding that there is an element of compassion and there's an element of investigation and we want to get at the truth when an accusation is made. Let's be candid. Just to use a quick illustration, Robert Morris was accused by a woman that he has now acknowledged and admitted that he violated when she was a minor and he was an older man. I mean, he was 21 or 22 years of age. So he sexually molested a child, and then he moved forward in life and became this very famous pastor, and he lived for many, many years. She was always accusing, but nobody would acknowledge her. Nobody would recognize her. And finally, when it came to the surface enough that people started looking at it, these allegations were found about true. He is currently in jail for a short period of time, but he had to go to jail, and he has to pay this massive fine, and he'll never be in ministry ever again, and he shouldn't be, because even though that was done 20, 30, 40 years ago, the violation of a child is so egregious that it disqualifies you for the rest of your ministry. But, like some people would say divorce. Back in the younger, in my childhood, if you were a divorce pastor, you had to leave the ministry. Sometimes people, that has changed a little bit today, where people say there might be some examples where a pastor shouldn't be a pastor anymore if he's gotten divorced, but there might be some examples of times that pastors can rejoin the ministry after a time of healing and restoration and all that. So I think what we're trying to ask our audience is, did the body of Christ and did the world make a mistake to totally and completely abandon the messages of Ravi Zacharias, the gift that he was, that we all celebrated? And if you take the position that he did something so bad in these accusations, and if true, then he should, all the books should be taken off the shelf and all the videos should be taken off the internet. I will respect your point of view. I'm not here to challenge that. Yeah. But I'm saying you have to actually be able to hear somebody else who's maybe not as certain. I'm not saying that I'm completely, absolutely know without a shadow of a doubt that Ravi never did any of these things. But I'm not 100% sure that he did all of those things. Or maybe there's a possibility that he didn't do any of those things. But my point is that question is irrelevant at this point. He's dead and gone. And if you believe he was a saved Christian man, as I do, with all of his sins, sinners go to heaven.
It's for grace.
Yeah, sinners go to heaven because they're forgiven by Jesus Christ. So I have no doubt that Ravi Zacharias is enjoying heaven and thrilled by the forgiveness that he received. If he committed those sins, he's been forgiven.
It's by grace.
By the grace of Jesus Christ. And if he didn't commit those sins, he doesn't have to be forgiven. Yeah. But I think it is high time for us to have this conversation. Ravi's been gone for 4 years, almost 5 next year. His accusations and the investigation has come. And I just want to be one that says, hey, if you enjoyed Ravi's books or his message, I'd love to think that we could still listen and enjoy them and be inspired and be taught and be encouraged and be reminded of the validity of the Christian faith, which he spoke so well to. I think it's like we had a great resource that we've just abandoned.
Do you think people should hear the fact that the message that he was preaching is still necessary today?
Well, yes, because he was so relevant when it came to culture, when it came to the ongoing message. It's a fascinating thing, because with the internet, anything that is ever said and put on the internet, it's there forever. So, I mean, everything that Ravi, unless they take it off, they took off Ravi. But it can be there forever. And so something that was said in 2013 or 2000 and whenever, if it's on the internet, it's there for good. And the reality is that, Ravi's message was not only powerful and effective because he was a living person. That whole content, his whole library, would be something. And there are many Christian people that we still listen to who have passed away, either because they had TV recordings or audio recordings of some sort, because their preaching was so good and so wonderful and so profound and so impactful that we will do that with. Not many, but some. And some that are still on radio that have passed away, because Dr. J. Vernon McGee was just such an incredible Bible teacher, So, again, if our viewers go, I don't even know who this Ravi Zacharias guy is, it's a waste of my time to even watch this podcast, I get that. If you know this issue and it affected you in your life some way, and I know that it does, because I still get people who say, Greg, you knew Ravi. What do you think? Did he do these things? Did he not do these things? I sure hope he didn't do them. But if he did these things, he was a monster. And I go, I know. I would say you're right. If he did, he's a monster, But Jesus forgave monsters.
Me.
He forgave sinners. He forgave his number one guy that denied him 3 times and cursed him to his face. Jesus forgives sinners. He forgives murderers. He forgives rapists. He forgives thieves. He forgives, those that do vile things. The grace of Jesus Christ can cover any and every sin.
I mean, and I was going to ask you as maybe my last question, but can we learn today from his teaching? Can we be guide and instruct to go and defend our faith?
There's no doubt about it, and I think there could be an appreciation for the materials that Ravi left behind on video and on recordings that could still be a great resource to young Christians wanting to know that there is a good answer for the defense of the faith.
Yeah.
He was one of the tops. He was one of the best. He was one of the, he wasn't just a rank and file Christian speaker. He was one of the elite Christian speakers of the world. And because of these accusations, and again, if you think that that's the single disqualifying thing, I would have to tell you, there's a lot of people, more than Ravi, that are disqualified, that are preaching in pulpits every Sunday morning, not because I condone their sins, but because they are sinners. And yes, there's a different level of sin in what we're talking about with Ravi, and I'm not diminishing that one bit. And I say there's even a deeper level that followed Robert
People
Morris.
Engaging,
at what level of sin they're doing and the consequences of those sins.
Yeah.
Those are serious, very serious.
Yeah.
And we take great sincerity in saying that any victim of any sexual crime or sexual what would we say? Sin against you is violating and horrible and terrible. And again, there would be some people who think if Ravi, even if it's possible he did those things, I don't want to ever listen to that guy. Okay,
now,
then don't.
And
but maybe some others could say there's still something there for me to learn from, and I want to glean that information.
I was going to say there's only one person that I know that want to cancel the message of the cross. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, I don't want to be in that side,
But don't you think, and I'm asking you a question, I want to ask our audience, that sometimes, again, I don't know, I feel like I'm being repetitive here, but again, if he did worse than he was accused of, if he did only what he was accused of, if he did some of what he was accused of, but not all of it, or he didn't do any of it, and these resources, while he was living, and after he would have, because there were full plans to make his ministry continue, both with the young apologists that would fill the gap, and to continue the work of RZIM, but that all that material would have been categorized and put into a library that people could listen to and get information from. So Ravi's message and ministry could have continued for decades into the future, just because his message and his ministry was kept alive through those resources. But because of what he was accused of doing, it just almost just crumbled instantaneously. Yeah. And because of that, we don't have access to this great resource.
No, I will say the fact that the situation, one, he was a very well-known person, worldly. I mean, we're talking about around the world.
Around the world. The places that he spoke, the people to whom he spoke, leaders, heads of state, military leaders.
Because of that, the actions that he's being accused make it hard for people to kind of look back into that. It's kind of like, I take the message and I put it aside, and I don't want to, I don't want to know about that. I don't want to see it. It's kind of like, if I see him, if I start listening to him, I am endorsing him.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid reaction that people are having.
And I will say, I can still believe that what he did was wrong, but what he preached was right.
Yeah, I like that. I like what you just said there. And if you don't like that, give us a comment and tell us why we're off our noggins here. I say it again, what you just said.
I said, I can still believe that what he did was wrong,
right,
but what he preached was right.
Yes. And again, circumstances are so fascinating. Like, if you're the king of a nation and you take another man's wife, and then you have him killed because you don't want to be embarrassed by the product of that adulterous relationship, like King David was, the great king of Israel. who then had to suffer the shame and the embarrassment of what he did and the sin that he did. Read Psalm 51. And the child does in fact die that Bathsheba has, which is the woman that he committed adultery with. But he continues to be the king. And, there are many kinds of weird things in society and culture and history where people get away with things because the culture doesn't hold them to the same standard. But Ravi was held to a standard of perfection.
I mean, the thing is, the statement is tough because people is like, brother, what he did was wrong.
Horribly wrong.
This is the thing. And getting back, maybe we can finish with this, but getting back to what you were mentioning in the beginning, when you wrote that letter to President Hinckley, you didn't know what the future will bring.
Yeah.
We don't know what the future will bring because at the end of the day, maybe God has a plan in the midst of this whole thing.
Yeah.
He's going to bring it back and restore this man's life. And
Marco, can I be so bold as to say part of the reason I think we may be doing this podcast, because there's not a lot of people doing podcasts about Ravi Zacharias anymore. He's kind of on the dust.
Let's stay away from it.
And the volume of material on the internet in podcasts about Ravi Zacharias or after the time of the accusations and just examining that and exposing that and whatnot. So we've let the dust settle, and we're asking people to simply say, can you still receive the messages, the profound, powerful messages of a person who failed in a very egregious way like this, or is that failure so significant that nothing he said or she, whoever the case may be, is valid anymore? And I'm going to say that I take the position that I do believe that you should and could listen to Ravi's message, notwithstanding whether he did or didn't do all or any of what he was accused of, and still be valid, still be blessed, and that would be a valuable thing to enjoy and be taught and to learn from Ravi's teachings. I think I would be happy if there was a day when there was an RZIM channel where you could go and look up categories of talks and that Ravi Zacharias' voice could be heard again, and his books would be on the shelves again. And like C.S. Lewis. We're still reading C.S. Lewis. He's been dead since 1963. We don't have to just cancel people because of some of their imperfections.
Yeah.
And again, we understand the nature of sin, that there are levels of sin. In God's mind, there are no levels. Sin is sin, he says. And if you break a part of the law, it's like you broke the whole law.
Yeah.
But in the world, there are categories of sin. You don't go to jail for stealing a 5-cent piece of candy, but you go to jail for stealing millions of dollars. You don't go to jail for spitting at somebody, but you go to jail for murdering somebody. So we understand that there are differences of sin and failure and murder, acts of sin and illegal acts. So, I don't want to diminish anybody's opinion that is different than mine. Yeah. That's what we are about, convicted civility.
Can I say something? Yeah. Recently, I watched this documentary on Netflix about this. TDK was the murder. Do you remember it? Have you watched it?
I haven't watched it, no.
It's a good documentary. It's funny. But and it's the story of the daughter kind of like going through her whole experience. And this is the part that I want to relate with you. Nobody can deny the acts of this man, the TDK guy. But for her, she said, that was my dad.
Yeah.
That was my dad, and I have my memories with him.
Yeah.
I have the experience that I have with him. He was not TDK. He was not the man that everybody accused. Wow. And why I'm saying this is because for you, Ravi...
He was a serial murderer.
Yeah, I know. For you, Ravi was your friend.
Yeah.
Was this mentor, was this person that...
And if you hate what I'm saying, at least give me that.
You know what I mean?
A little empathy for the unbelievable and painful reality that if these things are so, then this friendship that I had was dishonest. This admiration I had for him was not warranted. So there is a human component here that even a bad man can be loved by a son or a daughter, or a family member or a friend.
Totally.
And so I would hope, like I said, maybe this is a little pebble in the pond that creates some rings of conversation where people begin to ask the question, could there ever be is there any legitimacy to one day letting the voice of Ravi Zacharias speak again, teaching us again about the profound truths of Jesus Christ and the evidence that exists for God. Some of the arguments, some of the communication that he had were so powerful that people would walk away and go, man, I like your friend. She speaks of the influence of this man. And
I mean, he's not a friend. She's an influence in YouTube.
The person you were talking about. Yeah. Well, should we wrap it up? I think we're at the end of this. We try to keep these things to an hour and a half at most, and appreciate that you've listened in. And again, we might have just enraged certain people who don't even like us speaking well of Ravi in any sense of the word. Again, you are free.
We still want to hear you.
We want to hear your voice.
We want to hear your voice.
The comment section below, again, why can't we just talk about it? Why can't we just have a conversation about this without feeling animosity towards each other? That, Dr. Ben Carson just spoke at Utah Valley University, the same place where Charlie Kirk was shot and killed. Dr. Carson, world famous neurologist,
right,
and member of the Trump cabinet in the first administration, a wonderful Christian man. And he was speaking that America, that was his kind of final line in his speech, America's great challenge of today, like the World War II generation or the World War I generation, there was a challenge in the world that they had to face and confront and deal with. And he said, ours is a divided nation. We have got to figure out how to come together and disagree without wanting to kill each other. Yeah. We are going to rip our nation apart. And it's what happened to Charlie that gives us a very serious and sober reminder that that's not the way you handle your disagreements. You don't kill somebody or assassinate them verbally or whatever and try to physically harm them. So our heart is really that you would have taken this podcast, thought it through, examined your own feelings about Ravi's ministry and whether or not there's somebody there. Maybe you don't know Ravi's ministry. You're like, I want to hear this guy. I want to, find.
That would be amazing if this sparkles something with that. That would be cool.
So you can check out the Standing Together YouTube channel and just find Ravi Zacharias in our. I think if you put Ravi Zacharias,
we will be the only one.
and if not, LDS Tabernacle, you put in LDS Tabernacle and it will definitely pop up.
Yeah.
So you will hear a man who, with profound clarity, preach the Word of God and the power of the Word of God and the authority of the Word of God and the truth of Jesus Christ in ways that were stirring to the soul, and we've kind of lost all that. So anyways, we're going to leave it there. Thank you for listening to Building Bridges. We're going to keep trying to provide more content, like I said, where you can check in and watch and see for yourself and hear for yourself how we're doing on extending this message of being a bridge builder, of being a communicator, being respectful and loving in your disagreements with people in the office, in the family. The holidays are coming, and some of you are going to sit around tables with people who believe very differently than you do. Let's begin with love. Let's begin with kindness. Let's have honest conversation, but let's do it in gentleness and respect, like 1 Peter says. So we'll see you next time on Building Bridges with Greg Johnson.